Evening, and welcome to Alchemical Connections with Chrissy McMahon. And tonight is Sunday, October 20th, 2013, and our special guest tonight will be one of the presenters at the seminar on energy that I will have December 5th, 2013 here in Sullivan County. Venue hasn't been selected yet, but the date is secured. And we have three speakers, and John Anthony Trallo will be our first presenter, and he is a professional guitarist, singer-songwriter, music teacher, and luthier, with over 25 years of experience. All music and instruments heard on the site are being performed entirely by John Anthony Trallo. And you are listening to Free Flight, although I can't hear it. I'm sure someone can. Born and raised in South Philadelphia. Yay, Philly! John began playing the guitar at the age of 11 and eventually went on to study with world-class master guitarist teacher Dennis Sandole, 1986 to 1991, Pat Martino, 1977 and and Calvin Harris, 1974 to 1976, and Anna Caskerenko, 1969 to 1971. After attending Combs College of Music, he spent the next 16 years sharpening his music skills, playing in Philadelphia nightclubs and the Jersey Shore. Okay, I just want to make sure there were some lights on. I want to make sure I wasn't missing anything. The Atlantic City casinos, recording studios, and touring the U.S., Canada, South America, and some of the best rock, blues, and R&B bands as a professional guitarist. Considered one of the more eclectic and versatile guitarists around, John plays 6- and 12-string electric and acoustic guitars, slide guitar, classical guitar, lap steel guitar, ukulele, banjo, bass guitar, violin, and keyboard. His style of playing ranges from rock to blues to funk to jazz to classical and everything in between and beyond. Over the years, John continued his education by taking advanced courses at Community College of Philadelphia, Temple University, and Camden County College, earning a bachelor's in music education and psychology, and has certified accredited teaching certificates in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. John is also a member in good standing of Child Line of Pennsylvania and has current PA Act 34 and 151 clearance. John Anthony Trallo is also a supporting member of Music Cares, an organization dedicated to providing emergency disaster relief. If you are a musician or other professional in the music industry who has lost housing, goods, instruments, equipment, or employment due to natural disaster or illness, please contact MusicCare and/or the relevant organizations listed on their website. There may be help available, and that's www.grammy.com, MusicCare's disaster_relief. After coming off the road, John settled in Gloucester Township, New Jersey. However, in 2002, he moved to the rural My cue was on. Maybe somebody was trying to tell me. Sorry about that. We're playing music and trying to chat at the same time. Didn't mean to do that, but let me hit my, what do you call it? Okay, we did stop it, so we'll continue. Coming off the road, John settled in Gloucester Township, New Jersey. However, in 2002, he moved on to rural endless mountains of Sullivan County, Pennsylvania, which he now calls home. There, John teaches music, has a stringed instrument repair shop, and performs and records locally and out of the area with various musicians. The band EFB and as a solo artist, John has also just completed recording his first solo album entitled Free Flight. Okay, I gotta turn the poppers off. I got friends chatting, and every time they write something, it pops. So You are a solo artist, and John has also completed recording his first solo album called Free Flight on CD, which features 5 of his original compositions and some interesting arrangements of a few cover songs. You can hear or request selected tracks from this album on the internet radio chilitech.fm by clicking on this link, and I will put that in the chat box for anybody who likes to listen to John's original compilations. And we'll continue. John is currently composing and recording music for his second solo album, soon to be released. Also, the band Brown Penny, formerly EFB, which features John on lead electric and acoustic guitar, slide guitar, bass, and banjo, is writing and recording a follow-up album to American Holiday, Eclectic City, and Chapters, which, again,
it was eclecticity.
Eclecticity, thank you for the correction, which you can listen to by clicking on, and then there's another link for Brown Penny. We'll put the first one up, and then we'll post the second. So thank you for visiting the website. So that's John's biography on his personal website, johntrallo.com. And I'd like you all to welcome John Trallo. Thank you for being here, John.
Hi, Chrissy, and thanks for having me on and for this opportunity.
Yeah, this is amazing. We're very fortunate. Just briefly, I just want everybody to know that John is my guitar teacher, but our first lesson was really in understanding that we were both on the same wavelength. We're both alternative researchers. John is very instrumental in this local area in the Marcellus Shale debacle and has protested and lobbied and done many wonderful things to try to slow and stop the progress of the gas wells being drilled in Sullivan County and surrounding areas. And tonight he's going to talk about energy. We're going to talk about a lot of different things because we have a lot of things in common. So I'm going to let John kind of direct us in where he wants to go, but he can start by maybe giving us a little introduction into his own personal understanding of life in the world and how he got involved in energy in the first place. So thank you, John, again for being here. And where do you want to start? This is an amazing journey.
Well, Chrissy, I guess we're going to rewind back to around, I guess it was 2008, when I first heard of the Marcellus Shale play and the process of hydraulic fracturing, neither of which I knew anything about whatsoever. And I was probably reasonably apathetic. I didn't think much of it. I didn't think anything was going to become of it. And then the landmen started coming around, and it held a few meetings at local fire halls and things like that. And the money they were offering and the promises they were making just seemed a little bit too good to be true for me. And I guess that's my South Philly street smarts kicked in, and I got curious and a bit suspicious. So I started looking into things and doing some Google searches, and was kind of shocked to find out the horror stories that I was hearing and reading about. So I decided to, do a little investigating on my own and went to some areas where this had been taking place. And much to my surprise, I found out that the stories I heard did no justice to it. It was even worse than what I had heard. A lot of the people that I began speaking with in the affected areas had this lost look in their eyes, these panicked expressions that were undeniable to me. I knew what their concerns and the problems they were facing were very, very real. So I continued to study as much as I could about this. I went to industry presentations. I went to anti-industry presentations. This was all before I saw or even heard about the movie Gasland. Then when the movie came out in 2010, I saw that, and it made a lot of sense to me. It put a lot of the concerns that I had heard from other people and some of the things I've witnessed into a broader perspective, and I became quite alarmed. I had, contacted some individuals who were experts in the field. One was Dr. Anthony Graffia up at Cornell University, and spoke with him about this, who gave me an education I could never even put a dollar value on. I also spoke with Dr. Terry Engelder from Penn State, who was considered the father of the Marcellus shale play, and a pretty, strong advocate of this development. Mm-hmm. Both of these individuals were coming from different camps and had different opinions on this, so I had organized a sort of a debate, a presentation at the Sullivan County High School in LaPorte here between Dr. Engelder and Dr. Engraffia. Dr. Engelder pretty much made the case, without trying to, against hydraulic fracturing, against this practice. He started out by asking how many people in the area were customers of natural gas, and in this area there are none. Then he thanked us for being the unwilling participants to make this sacrifice for natural gas development, admitted that there was going to be problems, that there are contaminations, that there are going to be spills, and also said that he believed it was his, and he used these words, it was his religion that in time the industry would learn to get it right, but they couldn't do that without being able to practice somewhere, and we should be honored to have them do this here in our backyards. Most people there, including myself, were appalled by this statement, and I found it interesting that a scientist would say that his opinion of this was like his religion, because I thought science was always fact-based, not faith-based. Once, after that presentation, I'd also co-hosted a Gasland screening, and I guess that sort of put me out into the forefront of the movement here in this part of Pennsylvania, and I just began getting more and more involved with it. I moved here, as you stated in my biography. I was born and raised in Philadelphia. Where I was raised in Philadelphia was right in between the refineries on the Schuylkill and the factories on the Delaware. Depending on which way the wind blew, determined what odors we were going to have to endure that day. it was sort of a goal of mine to get away from that and to live my life and raise my family in a clean, safe environment. The reason I chose Sullivan County, I had been coming up here camping with some friends of mine from way back in the 1970s. I had always was fascinated by the area. I was awestruck by its beauty and the pristine environment here. And in 2002, I decided it was time to make that move. I'd come up here for a visit and realized that the area had not changed. And I figured this may be the one place in Pennsylvania or in the Northeast region of the United States where I might be able to live, where all the industrial pollution and problems that I grew up with would not catch up to me, at least not in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. 7 years later, the gas industry popped up, and here we go again. However, what I think is important for people to understand is if you look at the history of this industry, this is not what you would call your grandfather's gas well. Mm-hmm. Traditional, or what they call conventional drilling, meant you drilled a hole straight down, you hit a pocket of natural gas, you stuck a pipe in, and that might last for 50 to 100 years, what was coming out of that one well. Hydraulic fracturing, or unconventional gas drilling, is not that at all. This is what they call tight gas. These are tight gas reserves. This is gas that is trapped in rock. Mm-hmm. The only way they're going to get it out is to bludgeon and fracture the rock. When they do that, you only get perhaps maybe 10% of what is down there. And the average lifespan of a shale gas well is 7 to 10 years. That means that they're going to have to drill more often. They're going to have to use more. They're going to put the wells in closer proximity to one another. They're going to be using billions, if not trillions, of gallons of fresh water to fracture these rocks, along with tons and tons of carcinogenic and very toxic chemicals. And this is going to be an enormous problem here. The biggest problem is with the well casings. The well casings are made of cement. Mm-hmm. According to the industry's estimate, about 5 to 7% of the well casings fail immediately. They're supposed to act as a gasket to stop any toxic flowback or chemicals or naturally occurring toxins from deep in the earth from coming back up, as well as methane and natural gas escaping. The problem is the casings fail. They're cement. Anyone who's ever walked down a sidewalk will notice that there are cracks in cement and in concrete. Cement does not last forever. Cement breaks down.
And also, it's permeable. Water or liquids can go right through it.
Exactly. It is also very permeable. The issue is that in time, we don't know what that time frame is. It could be 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, or 100 years. But in time, every gas well that is drilled the casings are going to fail, and this stuff is going to leak. What it's going to leak is going to leak methane. Now, methane in itself is not that much of a problem. However, it is also a far more potent greenhouse gas than CO2, which is going to contribute even more to climate change, extreme weather events, global warming. This is an undeniable fact. we're already seeing that happen now. For us to continue to use this extreme process of extracting fossil fuels for energy, which are all in finite supply, it borders on insanity. We are trading off our viable landmass, we're trading off our water supply through contamination and depletion. We are reducing our air quality. We're contributing to climate change. We are trading off our life-sustaining natural resources for a non-life-sustaining, toxic natural resource that are all in finite supply. When the unconventional gas is gone, when the unconventional shale oil is gone, we are still going to be stuck with, finding alternative ways to supply energy for ourselves. But in the meantime, we will have destroyed, our other natural, life-sustaining natural resources, and I can't imagine what this planet would look like. That is not a world that I want to leave to my children and my grandchildren.
No, and I think that's the whole premise behind Awake Radio. There's many radio stations on the internet like ours that are really dedicated to getting out the information, and this is just one of a myriad of topics, of issues that are devastating the ecology, the health, the well-being of human life, animals, minerals, whatever. All around, and trying to inject it out into the universe. It's just an ongoing process. But continue. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Please feel free to chime in, and if anyone chats or posts any questions, feel free to relay them to me, and I'll be happy to answer them if I can.
Well, we have two wonderful women, Carolyn and Debbie. I don't know, they might be friends of yours, that are posting amazing stuff in the chat box. Carolyn just wrote, there is more to worry about than the methane, because if the methane is leaking from the well casings, then all the other chemicals, as well as whatever comes up from the strata they are drilling, radioactive material, are also coming to the surface. So that's important. And now contaminating water wells, and radon is going into the basements at amazing rates near wells. And Truth Seeker 22 says money is at the bottom line for these companies. I wish it was that simple, Truth, but yeah, you're right.
Well, Carolyn, I know a few Carolyns, so I'm not sure which one it is, but she's absolutely correct, which is why I said the methane in itself is not the biggest problem. What you have down there is you have ancient water, ancient brine water, which is 25 times more saline than seawater. Mm-hmm. That is down there with the gas. As the gas comes up, this also starts to percolate into the aquifer. With it comes ancient bacteria that we're not sure what it is, and human beings have never really been exposed to, and we don't know how we're going to tolerate that. Also, what comes up, are naturally occurring toxins, arsenic,
radon.
Well, that's a different issue. I'll get to that.
Okay.
We have arsenic, we have barium, and things like that, which are, very, very serious poisons and very toxic to human beings and farm animals. That's our food supply. Now, another thing, you mentioned the radon. All shale is highly radioactive. We know that. We've always known that. The drill cuttings that come up from these wells are also highly radioactive, as is the brine water, and actually the gas itself is even radioactive to a certain degree. It brings up what's called radium-224 and radium-226. These are incredibly potent forms of radiation. Unfortunately, our regulatory authorities, at least in the state of Pennsylvania, are able to duck commenting on that or dealing with it because they only deal with what they call man-made sources of radiation, the kind that comes from nuclear facilities or hospital waste. They do not regulate or monitor what is called norms. And norms is called naturally occurring radioactive material. That's how they're classifying this, so they don't address it.
Okay, somebody asked a question. I think it's important to address it. Anon 7327. At what point are we going to claim self-defense?
I honestly, I think we're there now. What I see is, regardless of where anyone stands or what their opinion is on continuing fossil fuel development or not, even if I were for all that, which I'm not, but even if I was, what they are doing, they're using this industry to make a land grab. Now in Pennsylvania, they've instituted forced pooling, which means if your property is within what they're considering a viable production zone, and other properties around you are leased for development, and you say, I don't think I want this on my property, doesn't matter. You're going to get it. You have no say in it. Also, the issues that this is bringing on with public health, with public safety. I say this all the time. What would you do to defend your family, to defend your children? This is because that's what you're going to have to do with this eventually, one way or another. It's going to come to that.
Who are we going to defend ourselves against? Is it going to be the gas companies? Is it going to be the local government? Is it going to be the federal government? I mean, it's going to be us against them, because there's going to be people who think the Marcellus Shale and all these other things are wonderful, and they're helping the economy, and they're making people rich, and all this other crazy nonsense. Who are we going to fight? Really, when you think about it, where do we start? What do we do? How do we really change this? That's the question.
All right. First of all, I am not endorsing and never will endorse any kind of violence. I don't believe that is the answer. I do believe that we should probably start considering what I call our constitutional right to exercise nonviolent civil disobedience and direct action. Another thing I think we need to do is we need to stop going to our legislators with bended knee and hat in hand and asking them what they're going to do about this. These people are paid with our tax dollars. They work for us. They work for the people. Right. It's time for the people to start developing these elected officials and pushing them into a position where they're going to have to do the job of representing us and not the corporations. And I think we need to do this by telling them that, we know with Citizens United, there is no limit or any cap on campaign funds that you can get. We saw that with Governor Corbett, got $1.8 million. However, we have to remind them that all the campaign funding in the world is not going to keep them in office or get them elected without our votes. We need to start using that. We need to start speaking out. We need to start demanding, not asking, but demanding. Every legislator in this country, from the president right down to, your township supervisor, are at best temporary employees of the people. And on what what logic dictates that the employees tell their employers how the employers are going to behave? We're the employers. This might sound, I don't know, philosophical or, but we are a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. And we need to start acting like it. Because if we don't, we're going to end up living with whatever government and leadership we're going to tolerate. Mm-hmm. And that is what brought us to this point already.
Yes, and it's amazing. I've been on this journey for almost 10 years, and when I first understood what was happening, that my view of reality was completely warped, and I had no really clue about what was going on. I think first I got angry, and then I got scared when I started to hear all the different things, and it was really difficult to try to pick. What do you pick one thing to try to fight? And I'll use that word, and I don't mean a physical fight, but to do something to make a change. And I've taken the course to where I've got on the radio. In 2009, I finally got tired of talking and having people call me crazy and all this other stuff, and started talking on the radio and talking to people who are informed as yourself, and trying to just get the message out. And that's why I'm so grateful to be on Awake Radio and Shaziz Radio this evening with you, John, because that is their philosophy. They want to make a better life for their children and their grandchildren. They want people to have informed consent. They don't want people to be poisoned or radiated or whatever without their own knowledge. And it's difficult. This is a difficult process.
Not only without their knowledge, but even when these people are aware of this, it's being done to them without their consent.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, even the people that know about it are technically not, I'm not going to say they're not allowed to object or allowed to object, but then they are vilified and marginalized, and when they are, and there's attempts to discredit them. A lot of these attempts come from these landowner organizations who are very pro-drilling, who feel that those who are opposed to it are infringing upon their right to develop their property the way they see fit. Now, I'm going to go as far as to say they have a valid argument, except what they fail to realize and understand is that their rights to develop their property as they see fit begin and end at their property line. It is egregious that they would even dare, or that anyone would allow them to conduct any activity or allow any activity to be conducted on their property, which is going to threaten the security, the peace and quiet, the tranquility, the safety, or the health of their neighbor's property. How is it possible that these people feel that it is their right to do what they want on their property, even if it infringes upon mine or yours? That is wrong. It will be no different. It will be no different than, let's say, and I've used this analogy before, if I moved next door to you in a quiet rural community, and then one day I just decided I'm going to turn my home into a 24-hour biker bar with live music around the clock. That's my right. I'm on my property. I'm doing it on my property. However, it's going to keep you awake at night. You're going to have noise outside your home all the time. You're going to have strangers in your area. My activity then will be threatening your security in your home and what I would call the sense of place. Because when you buy a home, it's not just bricks and sticks. You're buying a sense of community. You're buying an assumed sense of security within your home. Anything that threatens that needs to be stopped.
Yes, and we have a gentle person, Fracking Kills. They signed in as, and they made several really amazing contributions to the conversation. Depleted uranium is used to break through the pipe for the fracturing. It comes back to the surface to be burnt and dumps into drinking water supplies. Birth defects will run rampant, as in Iraq, where depleted uranium was dumped on the population. War crimes and crimes against humanity will be brought on the traffickers, the frackers, I'm sorry. But also, you might be forgetting Fukushima. But as we go into the radiation issue, I want to remind everybody, we've been being irradiated by atomic and nuclear bombs since the 50s. So they've exploded thousands above ground, underground, and underwater. And this is an ongoing process. This is not just something that is restricted to the fracking in the country in the last 40 years or whatever, that we understand. And the Department of DEP, what's that? Department of Public, I don't know.
The PADEP. That stands for Don't Expect Protection.
Thank you for clarifying. Just starting their study of radioactivity in the drinking water. Well, they have plenty of studies they've been doing for decades. And the girls, Carolyn and Debbie, and I want to thank them too for their participation. We're all excited about them. The media that the alternative media that is bringing this information forward. And we have another True Seeker says the people that own the energy companies also own the mainstream media. Yes. And Brett 76544, yep, that's why there is zoning laws that we pass. I'm not sure how that fit into the conversation, but I didn't hear the whole thing. You should see what happens when someone dumps stuff into their sewer manhole. We had the DEP outreach conducting real-time testing when that stuff hit the sewer plant. Yeah, fracking, Debbie says, was explained to me by professor of anthropology as a chronic disaster, even greater than Bhopal. And I guess in Bhopal they had the chemical release. Maybe somebody could refresh my memory. But
that was in Bhopal, India, where there was a chemical factory that exploded.
Right.
Pretty much wiped out the town.
Yeah.
And there were hundreds of people who died. Hundreds. You have to understand. The industry, they claim they're going to be your new neighbors, and they want to be good neighbors. They don't want to be your neighbors. They want to get you out of there. What we are to them is in the way. In order for them to develop the Marcellus shale play or any other shale play in North America, they need to sort of like clear the deck. They need to get it all. If not, it's not economically viable for them. Which is exactly why we're seeing things like horse pooling being put into law in Pennsylvania. Last February we passed Act 13, which removes the right of communities to enact their own zoning ordinances that have anything to do with oil and gas development. Which means if they want to put it next to a school or next to a community, they can, or next to a playground, they can do that. If they want to put it in a public park, they can do that, because the communities have been stripped of their authority to self-govern and self-regulate. What I find interesting is that in Pennsylvania we have a predominantly Republican legislature and a Republican governor, and they claim that they are conservative. Well, the definition of conservative means to conserve. It means the smallest form of government down to the local level. And yet the actions they have demonstrated in this state politically and legislatively are the least conservative actions I've ever seen in my life. They've removed the rights of local communities to regulate this activity.
Well, I hope that everybody's aware that as of 9/11, the actions of the the Patriot Act and the NDAA and all these other wonderful laws that they passed, executive orders and such. One of the first things that Bush, the lesser, I call him, Bush Jr. did, was he passed the Clean Air Act. And I think you and I, John, we talked about this in our first meeting. And what it has really done has handed on a silver platter to all the corporations that deal with energy and basically are polluting our environment, gave them the option of whether they want to regulate themselves and how they're going to do that. So the Clean Air Act, I guess they used to say, how can he tell when a lawyer's lying? His lips are moving. Well, whenever the politician says something, we now know that it's the opposite. They're going to do exactly the opposite of what they're saying. So we already have that, imprinted on us, that we know whatever they're selling us over the mainstream media, they do exactly the opposite. And as people try to struggle in their day-to-day lives, most people worried about having a job, how they're going to feed their family, how they're going to live, how they're going to exist, and keep their homes and whatever, don't have a lot of time to spend doing what we're doing right now, talking about the issues, researching the wonderful things these women are saying. People tout radium-228 and radium-226, but not one agency is testing for polonium-210 and lead-210. Debbie, and it's workers who are suffering and will suffer more as time goes on. Carolyn says the Marcellus gas play is just another Ponzi scheme. Yep, they're all Ponzi schemes, and she's absolutely right. Leave Philadelphia an industrial waste zone for what? For the death of us, I'm afraid, says Truth Seeker. And Debbie says, include politicians like John Hanger. He's just blowing smoke to many of us. Yeah, they all are, Debbie. And I want to touch on voting. And not that I'm all, know everything. But the consensus is, as of 2000, 2004, and 2008, that elections are bought. They're not voted on. People don't vote. But one of the things that's always been considered is that local people who really want to make a change get involved in their local government. And from that angle, that we could make a change. So it's our opportunity to participate as like never before. And usually on a Sunday night when I'm just on here by myself and I don't have a guest, I'm lucky I have 2 or 3 people chatting with me. We have 10 people who have all identified themselves, who are all talking articulately about an issue that is very passionately affecting everyone. And I just want to commend everybody for having the courage to come on here and speak your truth and say what you have to say. And I asked Brett to clarify something about the bacteria at the sewer plant, and he had a change in the sewage coming from the plant, a sharp pH drop, changes in the oxygen levels showing depending on the zone's loss of bacteria. So within 15 minutes, one side of the plant was turned off to protect that side. Later, we had to remove the solids from half the plant and reseed the different bacteria. So that's what he was talking about. That the water that's coming into the sewage plant is affecting the pH levels and the bacteria levels that are used to treat the wastewater at the sewage plant. And within 15 minutes, he said. Okay, we need to get young voters interested in being involved. Okay, yes, civic involvement is always a possibility. And what I'm trying to do is on December 5th of this year, John Trallo is going to be the first speaker in a 3-speaker presentation. We're going to have Coltis Negrand, who I believe is still here, and Fernando Bosa are all going to speak on energy, and they're going to talk about different phases of energy. We're going to have John first because John is a local. John has his feet on the ground on the issues that are pressing in Schuylkill County and Bradford County And in Pennsylvania, per se, that's also touching not only on the United States, but all around the world where shale is being fracked. So, and Brett went on to say, and later that day, after work from my job was done, I inspected the more rural manholes in the system. I identified one that had been opened with a few dual tire tracks leading to it. So I guess he's trying to say that it's possible that there was sabotage, or somebody dumped something. The system is flawed and corrupt, needs a total revamp. Yeah, I'm with Truth Seeker. I totally agree. Brett is throwing out numbers, 26,000 gallons per day of water. I guess he's treating and working on. And Carolyn is testing is antiquated, and everything else, it needs to be updated to protect those that believe they are being protected. I'm going to have a guest next Sunday. His name's Alfred Labramont Weber, and he is a lawyer. He was on the commission to, what do you call it, for Bush the Lesser, to have him imprisoned for crimes against humanity. And one of the things that he suggests is that everybody consider getting your hair tested to find out what kind of chemicals are going through your own body. So you wouldn't just get a blood test or a urine test. You would actually get your hair tested and find out what the radiation level, what the lead level, radon, whatever other chemicals, that you think, fluoride, that are poisoning the environment, that need to be tested.
There are so many things that are being delivered to us physically through the water we drink and bathe in, and the air that we breathe, and the food that we eat. So many things that are just being slipped right under the radar. That we have no idea how our bodies are going to react to these in the long term. We're already seeing a rise in autism. We're seeing increased cancer rates, all in these newly christened industrial zones. There has to be a correlation. Carolyn was talking about, as far as the testing goes, the protocol they use are beyond antiquated. They are, in my opinion, scandalous. They are designed to not find certain things. They are designed, to cover certain elements that are being introduced into our bodies. The DEP, with the Marcellus testing, came up with 3 different levels of testing. In other words, if they tested for, let's say, 25 different chemicals, and they would assign a certain protocol number to that, which means they only obligated under that protocol to reveal 8 of those chemicals or toxins to the people whose water was tested. Doesn't mean they didn't test for it. It means they didn't tell them, and they didn't tell them because they don't have to. Mm-hmm. We have our regulatory agencies, state and federal, who are following protocols that the industry has imposed upon them. The industry is writing the laws for the states and the federal government to follow these regulatory procedures, and you have to scratch your head and say, well, of course the industry is not going to suggest any protocol or legislation or regulatory action that is going to interfere with their bottom line.
Absolutely.
It's all geared towards their profits. Another thing that I think is very important that we all need to realize is that this industry was sold to us in Pennsylvania, and as it was in other areas, as it was going to make us energy independent. It was going to make us get us away from foreign oil. It was going to provide, it was going to cause us to have lower energy costs domestically. It was cleaner than coal, and I emphasize cleaner than coal. It's not clean. Right. It's just cleaner than coal.
Yep.
And that's only as far as the carbon goes. However, in reality, this is not going to provide us energy independence because most of the foreign investors in North American shale plays are foreign entities and foreign governments. We have China, Japan, Norway, India, and Great Britain currently that own most of what is under our feet. We owe those countries a lot of money for bailing us out, for funding the Iraq War. We have borrowed money from them, and now it's time to pay them back. And this is how this government plans to do it, with energy. That's why we see all these export facilities now being applied for through FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which I might add is not federal. They're an industry-funded organization that is commissioned by our government to regulate and issue permits. But they are not a federal agency. They're like the Federal Reserve. They're not federal and there's no reserve. This is the same type of a scam here. So now we're having these export facilities, approved because at least, current estimates are that 61% of the domestic shale gas and shale oil that is being developed right now is going to be shipped overseas. We're already seeing, there was an article in the Philadelphia Inquirer just last week where the Pennsylvania Utility Commission announced that natural gas prices are going to be increasing in Pennsylvania this year by 13%.
Can you say that again, one more time?
Yeah. PUC announced that domestic natural gas prices for heating in Pennsylvania are going to be increasing 13% this year. Now, people are saying, well, why is that when the price is approximately $3.80 at the wellhead, when the price is 1/4 of what it was in 2008?
Right.
Well, the reason is because in China and in Japan and in India, this natural gas will bring about $20 to $22 per million cubic feet. It's going to cost the oil and gas industry approximately $9 from extraction to liquefaction to export per million cubic feet to ship this overseas. They will more than double their profit. It's a corporate business model. You have a product and you sell that product to the highest bidder, in the marketplace. We're dealing in a global marketplace right now. So that means in order for us to get it here, we're going to have to compete with overseas prices. We're going to pay more for it.
Yeah. Well, that's what they do with this, not to change the subject, but Walmart. The whole point behind Walmart, they come in, they get the tax abatement, they get the best land, they lower their prices because they buy in bulk. They're, the Waltons are what, 5 or now they're 4 of the 10 wealthiest people in the world. Maybe, I don't know, it's been a few years. That must have changed. And it's the same system. They keep using the same system. I wanted to share that we live in a fascist state. We don't live in the United States. We live in a fascist state. And for those of us who can see this, it is moving more into a socialist system. But let me remind you, I was in China in 2007, and I specifically went with a bunch of communists. And they were looking for communism in the monetary system. And they found out that there was no communism. It was the what do you call it? The capitalist system that we use they called it the socialist market system. It's a capitalist system. It's the same system. What they did, and if you want to research this, for hundreds of years they've been testing in all different directions what's the best system for control. And at the bottom of this website, underneath the chat, there's a couple little videos Larkin Rose made. I don't know if he made all three of them, but he made the I'm Allowed to Rob You and the story of your enslavement. And then there's the Tiny Dot, which, we all are starting to come to realize that it's a small portion that are trying to control the masses. And there's many, many, many more of us than there are of them. And we are so powerful, and I kind of threw that out in the chat. We don't even understand our own power because we've been dumbed down, we've been lied to, we've been fed a pack of bull crap, and it is time. We have this opportunity, we have this medium where we can get this information out, and there are things we can do to change the system. And that's what we want to talk about. And we're coming to the top of the hour. And maybe some people would like to come on and make a statement or ask a question. I'm available on Skype. And if you want to give me your phone number in private chat, I'll be happy to call you from Skype. If you'd like to do that and come on air, you can private chat me. If you don't want to put I don't want you to put your phone number out on the chat thing. But I'm available on Skype as Babsha Means Love. It's BABCHAMEANSLOVE, and I'll spell it. So if you want to Skype me, you can Skype that way, or you can give me private chat here on the chat line, and I'll be happy to call you and add you into the conversation. Debbie wants to give you a huge thanks, John, from all of us for helping and informing so many people. Yes, and that is one thing, John. We haven't even touched on the advocacy that you have provided for this local area for people in general. So we'll take a quick little break. And we'll come back and we'll see if anybody wants to come on air and chat with us, make a statement or ask a question. That would be wonderful. Okay.
Or
Thank
debate.
you. Go ahead. Say it again, John.
Or they could debate too.
Or they can debate.
I'd
we have no dissenters here.
That's right.
There's
And we're back. That was Karen DiBiase and her band Girl on Top with Army Nation. And we are back with John Trallo. And we're talking about so many things, and I want to give a big shout out to everybody on the chat, to Debbie, Carolyn, Brett, Truth Seeker, Pam, and I think maybe we lost a couple. There was somebody about fracking. Fracking kills. Quite wonderful comments, and everybody was chatting with each other while we were on the break. So we're going to go back to John, and John's going to give us some more of a story. It's just absolutely amazing.
All right. Well, one thing I want to mention before I forget or get caught up in anything, that I am also a member of an organization called the Shale Justice Coalition, and I want to mention, tell a little bit about what that's about. The Shale Justice Coalition is an organization of, various grassroots citizen organizations from not only across the state, but we even have some groups that have joined us from outside of the state. We were recently joined by Frack Free Ireland and No Frack UK. So we are now, I guess you can call us an international organization. This is part of the movement. There is a global movement to stop this terrible, invasive, and toxic industrial practice. I think in the rural areas of Pennsylvania and Ohio and West Virginia that I've seen, a lot of the people, they're isolated from the mainstream. They feel that they're not getting the support. They feel that they're alone. They feel like if they show up at a town meeting or call their legislators, that they're going to be considered the loose cannon, the crackpot. I want to tell those people, you're not. You are not alone. There are literally hundreds of thousands of people around the world who feel as you do, and we are ready to stand united, and challenge this industry. We have to keep in mind that all politicians, all of them, are pragmatic, which means no politician, Democrat, Republican, Independent, is going to do anything that is, in the people's interest, unless they're really forced to do that, unless they have no other choice. As they say in the world, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Mm-hmm. Well, the corporations are the squeaky wheels, and they've got lots of grease for politicians' palms. So what we have to do is we have to hold the politicians and legislators, locally and nationally. We have to hold their feet to the fire. If you look throughout history, the history of the United States, people don't realize that there was only about 11% of the colonists who actually wanted to sever ties with Great Britain. It was a small number of very dedicated, unified people who convinced the rest of the population why it was imperative that we be a free and independent country. It's the same thing with slavery, with women's voting rights, child labor laws, civil rights. Nothing has been accomplished, simply through the legislature until the people unified and took to the streets and demanded justice in one unified voice. That's the whole premise behind the Shale Justice Coalition. That's what we are trying to do. We are trying to unify voices, throughout Pennsylvania and all of North America and beyond in any way that we can. You can go to our website, which is shalejustice.org. Look us up. You can find out a little bit more about it. And now we'll go on.
Yeah, I posted it, and they have the Keystone Pipeline Civil Training Civil Disobedience in Philadelphia. It's funny, on Cherry Street they do a lot of things on 15th and Cherry. So yeah, it's unfortunate. It's a little bit too far for me, but October 26th they're gonna have this pretty cool workshop. So whoever can do that, I hope they can. I want to give a shout out to we are broadcasting on awakeradio.co.uk and shazizradio.com. And I want to thank Muddy Mudman and Shaziz and Colty and all the guys over there at Shaziz for making it possible for us to be able to do this. Part of the premise was they had a shout it from the mountaintop, and Shaziz was very passionate about making people aware that we have to stop the madness and do something to change the direction that this world is going on into. And that's how we both came together, the two radio stations. And we've been doing Shout It From the Mountain, and people can send their shouts to shoutitfromthemountain24@gmail.com. And we read them on air when we don't have guests or we're just mucking around in the middle of the night. But we do read them, and we do love them, and we thank everybody for participating. And this is just amazing. So we'll continue, and we have nobody on after us, so we go a little overtime. And I want to thank Awake Radio for providing us this venue along with Shaziz Radio. So thank you, John Trallo, for being here, and on more with your story.
Okay. A lot of people have said to me that, why am I putting myself out on a limb like this? Why am I exposing myself? Aren't I afraid of retribution? Well, I guess the short answer to that is I'm concerned about it, but I'm not afraid. I will not be afraid.
Mm-hmm.
I have, there have been attempts at silencing me and intimidating me. I had one local, I'm not going to mention the name, but a local community shill who actually pulled me aside and offered me a reasonable sum in pipeline stock if I would shut up. And I turned that down. And I want to qualify that by saying I am by no means rich or wealthy. I just have enough for me, and I'm happy with that. I'm not a greedy person. So I turned that down. I've also been threatened. I had one landman who came from a seismic company knock on my door one time and told me he needed me to sign a seismic agreement so they could do seismic testing on my property. I told him, thank you, but no thanks. I'm not interested. And he says, well, if we don't do that, how are we going to get the gas? I said, then don't. Leave it there. It's fine right where it is. It's not bothering anyone. And he said, well, then, if we don't get the gas, you're not going to get your money. I said, that's okay, because I didn't sign a lease. He goes, well, I can get you a lease. I said, no, you don't understand. I've been offered to sign a lease. I don't want a lease. Industrial activity is not what I have in mind for my home. So I'm not interested. At that point, he got quite rude and belligerent. Said I was one of those tree huggers, which I don't think I am. But he got extremely rude with me. And I told him, I said, you're standing on my porch. I said, I don't allow people to come on my porch and insult me or abuse me or try and pressure me into things that I'm not going to do. I said, so now I'm going to ask you to leave. And he informed me that he was not going to leave, that he was going to, one way or another, I was going to sign this. And at that point I told him, I said, I'm telling you to leave. If not, I want to charge you with defying trespass. He then turned around and said to me, "Well, I'm glad you told me that." He said, "Next time when I come back, maybe I won't knock on your door. Maybe I'll just walk around your property. Maybe I'll just start taking measurements. And then if you or some whore wife comes out of the house, or some pain-in-the-butt kid, then I'll think you're going to attack me for trespassing, and I'll defend myself." At that point, he opened his jacket, showed me his handgun, and said that maybe when he comes back, he'll actually put me in the ground with the gas.
Wow.
This was in broad daylight at 11:15 on a July morning. Other neighbors witnessed this. Then he got into his truck and took off. I took his license plate number. I took the information off of his truck. Excuse me. I called the company he worked for, and they said, "Well, he's an independent contractor, and they don't keep records of who was in what vehicle." So they couldn't help me. I called the state police, and the state police, Pennsylvania State Police, were next to useless. They came here and says, "Well, he didn't actually try and shoot you. Did he if he didn't point the gun at you, it's only a verbal threat."
It's a terroristic threat.
Right, but they were not going to act upon this whatsoever. Excuse me. I've been told that if I didn't watch my mouth or mind my business, accidents happened. I could be run off the road. They could find me in the ditch. Last September, on a rainy evening, we were awakened in my home at 5:15 in the morning by someone pounding frantically on my front door. I got up, I went to the door. All I saw were bright lights and flames. And whoever this individual was, and if he's listening, thank you, because you probably saved my life and my family and my home, because someone had lit our porch on fire.
Oh, my God.
I grabbed a hose, I started putting it out. Meantime, we called 911. The fire department came, they examined it. Fire marshal showed up, state police investigators showed up. They determined it was arson, that some combustible substance was placed under my porch, and I had lattice in front of it. And besides, like I said, it was raining. The ground was wet. It wasn't like someone tossed a cigarette there and caught the porch. It could not have happened that way. They also found a burnt rag behind my home, behind my garage, and the ground was wet under it, which showed that, but the rag was dried, so that showed that apparently someone was going to try and toss something towards the back of the house too, but they dropped it and just took off. Again, nothing came of that. But I don't know if it's because I grew up in a very tough neighborhood in South Philadelphia, or maybe I'm just that stupid. I don't know, but I'm not going to be intimidated. That's not the type of person I am. I'd rather go down swinging, fighting for my rights and for the rights of my family and my children, than to live like a mouse. That is not an example I want to set for my family, and it is not in my nature or my character to live that way. So now I guess I hide in plain sight, as they say. Mm-hmm. Anyone who knows me knows where I stand. I'm not going to harm anyone. I wouldn't threaten anyone. I'm not a violent person, but I will defend myself.
Certainly, and I applaud you for standing up to all this madness that you've had to deal with, you and your family. And as a result of your, steadfast watch and and activism in this arena of Marcellus Shale and what's going on, you brought attention to yourself. And when we met the first night, we had a wonderful conversation. We talked about a lot of things, and just, I guess more or less just affirmed for each other that, you know, we were on the same page, that we thought the same, we had the same ideas about things, we understood about the same level about what's really going on in this world, and what we'd like to see happen, you know, to try to make a change in things that we were doing. And we just kind of touched briefly on so many topics. And before I left your house, I didn't get my guitar lesson.
Not that first night,
no,
you did the second time.
But I did get this amazing book, Energy, Overdevelopment, and the Delusion of Endless Growth by the Post-Carbon Institute. Maybe you could explain how this came into your possession and what's the premise behind it, and a little bit about the book and about what we talked about.
Apparently someone, and I do not know who's affiliated with the Post-Carbon Institute, must have seen something I posted or heard something about me. I have no idea what, but thought that I deserved 20 copies of this very expensive, very large book, and asked me if I would just, you know, they gave these to me for no charge, and asked me to give them to people who I thought would be able to understand them and use their voice to make a difference. So that's what I've done. I have 4 books left, but the whole, you know, I'd love to talk about alternative energy. I keep hearing from, you know, politicians and different industry representatives that, they're all about alternative energy. They think it's wonderful, and someday we're going to get there. Someday. But not now. It won't happen for 50 to 100 years. And I say that's not true. They only discuss alternative energies in a singular, you know, in I guess a singular form of it. They'll talk about just solar, or they'll talk about just wind, and they also want to talk about it in the concept of a centralized renewable energy grid. Well, for one thing, we don't need a centralized grid. We could do individual solar. We could do individual wind. What I think would be the answer, and of course I'm not naive, I don't think we're going to be able to do this tomorrow and throw a switch and turn off fossil fuels overnight. There's going to be a transitional period, of course, but we're not going to get there unless we start working towards that now. There are so many alternative forms of energy. We have solar, we have wind, we have geothermal, we have fusion, we have hydrogen cells, we have passive solar, solar voltaic. These combinations of things, you know, would work. We have the landmass, we have the wind, we have the sunlight.
We have over unity, we have magnetic devices, we have
exactly.
Tesla coils. We have Tesla technologies. We have hydro. Did you mention the hydro cells and all that?
Right. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. We also have tidal energy that we could use, which are like turbines, you know, offshore at the bottom of the ocean to generate energy to the land. The thing is, a centralized grid is going to be necessary, but in a very, very, very limited capacity. It's only going to be necessary to offset, some of the deficiencies initially in individualized renewable energy sources. We're seeing this in Germany. We're seeing it in Spain. We're seeing it in France. Germany, they're more than halfway to being 50% renewable right now. One of the problems we have with that in this country is the subsidies. We give $4 billion a year to oil and gas subsidies. We're subsidizing the richest corporations on the planet to further their agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And if we took that money and put it towards renewables, within the next decade, we would be there. Without any doubt in my mind, we would be there.
Well, I did get an email from your friend of mine, John Silla, and he said that the government is providing additional funding for people who are promoting or generating or whatever alternative energy.
What they're doing is they're giving tax credits,
mm-hmm.
And cashback subsidies. That much is true, but are they subsidizing the industry to develop this? The answer to that is no. Right. They're not. Why are we investing in fossil fuel development when at a time like this we need to be divesting from it?
Well, here's a kicker, and because I'm involved in so many different issues, it's just a real important. We live in a system. Our Constitution says that our government can print money interest-free, but yet we have a central bank called the Federal Reserve, which is a private bank, has nothing to do with the federal government, that's printing our money at interest. And that's what your taxes are paying for, the interest. They don't even pay for the money that's being printed. And they're printing money like it's water coming out of a tap. They're just doing whatever. And what I want to say is the whole reason for my doing the energy show is to help people understand what a construct this is. It's our imagination that keeps us afloat. There's nothing back in the dollar bill. The dollar bill has no value.
Right. It's called a fiat currency.
Right. So, go ahead. You want to explain it? You can do it.
Okay. A fiat currency or fiat monetary system has been tried numerous times in other countries. Every time it has ultimately failed. What that means is you have a monetary system which is not backed by anything. It has no intrinsic value. Its value is only quantified by its debt. People say that it's something that I always find fascinating. Someone will say, "Well, I bought a home for $30,000. 10 years later, I sold it for $100,000." Well, the home didn't get any newer. The bricks and sticks to build it are the same. They didn't increase in value. What that means is it took that many more dollars to equal the same value of your original purchase 10 years later. That's what that means. Our monetary system is doomed to collapse. It has to. We cannot continue to live off of debt and forever. Sooner or later, they're going to call the debt in. Right now, we are indebted to China, India, Great Britain, and yes, even Saudi Arabia. If they call the debt in tomorrow, we collapse. Now, some think that will never happen, and I will say that will never happen as long as it is to their advantage to see the U.S. afloat. Once we have nothing more to offer them, once they have, confiscated our natural resources like they are with fossil fuels right now, once they've depleted that and we become an extraction colony, we are of no use to them, then they call in the debt. And then we're done. We're going to wean ourselves from our addiction to foreign oil, and I guess form a whole new addiction to domestic natural gas that's owned by the the same countries we're trying to get away from,
Mm-hmm.
that we are indebted to. An interesting thing is, I'll throw this out, and I challenge anyone to do it, and they will see that I'm correct. Let's say if you went into a car dealer and looked at a vehicle that, say, comes in at $40,000, and you say to that car dealer, I'll tell you what, instead of financing, I'll buy that vehicle for $8,000 cash right now. And the dealer is going to say, absolutely not. And then if you say, well, what if I give you $8,000 in real silver or gold coins? He would take that deal in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be those coins are actually worth $30,000 in today's market.
Wow.
But I mean, we're living off of debt right now. When I say that the government is subsidizing the oil and gas industry, they are and they're not. Who is subsidizing them is us.
Right.
Because the government has no money. None. They never did. And they never will. All the government has is our money. They get their money from tax dollars and contributions. So they confiscate our money, our tax dollars that we work for, and then they decide how it's going to be spent, and they spend it in a manner which is against the greater good of the people who are providing the money in the first place. That is insane.
Yeah, it is insane, and like I said from the beginning, so many people are so busy trying to keep their head above water that they don't even understand the construct that this financial system really is, and it's only really being propped up by our imaginations because we believe that it has value. That's why it is what it is. Everybody's been talking about debt tonight, and I think it's important. I don't want to discount it, but when we think in lack, I think we magically draw that to ourselves, and when we think in abundance, then we can create that in the same token. Like it's like whatever you focus your thoughts on, that's what you draw to yourself like a magnet. And if anybody, go ahead.
Well, I mean, the thing is, if you look at when this country was the most prosperous, I'm not going to say made the most growth, but the most prosperous was prior to the Federal Reserve Act in 1914. It was prior to that, when you kept your earnings, where you were able to reinvest them. Any country that is going to be economically solvent has to produce and manufacture the things that country consumes.
Right.
We no longer do that in the United States. We have sneakers that are made in China for less than $3 by slave labor. We're not getting them any cheaper here. Now we're paying $100. We're still paying $100 for them. Why? Because we found a way to, reduce the cost of labor to increase the corporate profits. The people here, we are not benefiting by any of this. And how this sort of ties into the whole natural gas export thing notion is, what we're doing is we are now going to be exporting, this natural resource, this fossil fuel, this energy supply to third world countries like China and India, who are going to use this to provide a feedstock for their industries there, for their manufacturers. it's going to be too expensive for manufacturing to be done here because the feedstock, the energy supply, is going to cost too much. So they can go over there, pay the same for the energy, but reduce their labor costs. So now what we're going to do is we are providing that we're not only exporting jobs because of cheap labor, now we're going to be exporting jobs because of the energy supply that we're shipping overseas to supply these overseas manufacturers so they can sell us back cheap crap that we're not making here anymore.
Yeah, I think my friend Truth Seeker and I last night were chatting about some of the reasons behind how they're maybe it was somebody else, one of my girlfriends, but they're taking away all the jobs and making it so that we're so dependent on them and turning it into a prison. What do you call it? Prison planet, because basically it's not going to be just the United States. And I was really concerned about that because then it hit me. I'm like, oh my God, they're only paying prisoners 93 cents on a dollar for labor they're doing in prison. And how is that going to impact the rest of the world? I mean, if it's presidents that they work off of, like it's already been done, or that's the legal lingo. If it's already been in place, then that's the way they're going to continue.
And what is happening with our prison system? What are we doing with the prison system here in the United States?
They're privatizing it. There's 7 million people in America in prisons. Right.
They're privatizing the prison systems because if they privatize them, then they can farm out the prison inmates. They can use them to assemble products, to manufacture things. So there is no incentive, even for a fair justice system under the law. The incentive is to get more people in. That we're building a cheap prison labor force, which and I also think that this has a lot to do with our drug laws. And no, I do not advocate the use of any illegal drugs. But what I'm saying is, let's assume that you're the warden of a prison, a private prison that is now operating for profit. Who would you rather have in your labor force there? A violent criminal or some poor college kid who's educated who got arrested for having marijuana in his possession? Mm-hmm. Who do you want working on things? Who is going to be easier for you to control?
Right.
It's the college kid. It's the nonviolent offenders. And again, who is paying for this?
The taxpayers.
We are. Right. We are paying for this as well. One thing that I want to talk about, with the natural gas industry, I should say our energy industry, is we have many politicians who are now talking about regulation, best management practices, things like that, so we can continue to produce fossil fuels in this country so we can ship them overseas. My problem with that is that regulation, by its very definition, is not any kind of a preventive measure or protective measure. What it does is it means we are going to now regulate the damage and the illness and the intrusion into people's lives. We're going to regulate the flow and rate of damage. It doesn't prevent it. It just adjusts the rate of it. That to me is unacceptable. I'd like to know who decides what is considered acceptable sacrifice, or how many people should be sacrificed, or how many people being made ill or losing their lives is an acceptable trade-off for this energy supply. And do these people have anything to say about it? The answer is there is no number. Mm-hmm. And these people have nothing to say. And that's what makes it unjust to continue this. You can't regulate an industry that resists regulation and writes the laws or legislators pass so that they cannot be effectively regulated or enforced. You have to shut it down. That's the only thing this industry is going to understand. They have to be, if you're going to allow this at all, it has to be with a very heavy or else. If you do this, if you violate these laws, then we will shut you down. As long as we're not doing that, any violations, any fines that are imposed, just get written off as the price of doing business.
Yep. Yeah, maybe we should read a couple more of these statements because some of them are really interesting.
Okay.
I'm going to back up a little bit because when I posted the Keystone Pipeline Civil Training, Civil Disobedience, they were into some kind of conversation. It was quite interesting. You know how hard it is to effectively debate from that other side's point of view when you know you can state the different federal studies, EPA, OSHA, Department of Interior, and others, and that was Brett. And that can negate what you would say in two responses. So let's see, in 1981 there was an EPA document showing where Cabot oil and gas contaminated water wells in West Virginia. And Debbie said it would be nice to see Shale Justice Coalition invite Ohio and West Virginia. This tri-state area is a mess, and we are all in this together.
Well, I'd like to say this. Ohio is certainly invited. All they have to do is go to our website and give us their information and say that they want to be a member, and they're a member.
Okay. And Brett continued with, just remember that other acts of violence had been inflicted on people by people supporting gas drilling. In fact, gas drilling groups were listed in the PA intelligence brief as to watch for attacking people not in favor of gas drilling. And I asked, you touched on that in the beginning of the show. How do we engage these? What do you think that we can do to bring these people together? And Brett said, non-point source. Wait. Bypass the people at the head of the pro-drilling groups and talk to the people. Not in big groups, but friends. Get people comfortable talking about this to others after church with family. Give them good questions. Show them what has happened elsewhere where bills for gas are being received instead of royalty checks. But I didn't ask him to define that, but I think that's important because I was working at the Roadhouse down the road here, and there was a gentleman bragging about how he got his lawyer to write a agreement that was favorable, he felt, to him, and he was kind of really proud of himself. And in the next statement he said that the checks aren't as big as they used to be, and they're not coming when they're supposed to come. So when I say that to other people who are in favor of this system, they'll say, well, I don't hear anything about that. People are getting their checks and people are happy and they're making good settlement agreements, and I don't know what's the story. I'm just coming in this
okay.
couple months.
I'll use Bradford County as a prime example. Up there are literally hundreds of properties up there who now have mechanics liens on them because of gas drilling. And how that works is this. As anyone notices, all of these gas companies, all of these industries are listed as LLCs, limited liability corporations.
Corporations, yeah.
So what they do is you have the landman comes, gets you to sign a lease for whatever terms you negotiate, doesn't matter. Then he sells that lease to the gas company, who's operating in that area. That gas company now has the rights to your subsurface oil and gas minerals. Now, I'll mention it, Chesapeake is probably the biggest abuser of this. Chesapeake or Anadarko or Talisman, they don't drill the wells. They subcontract this. They subcontract to contractors to build the pad, to clear the land, to build the access roads, to lay the pipe, and to actually do the drilling and to bring in the water and the chemicals and the silica sand. Now, most leases will say you're going to get X percentage of the profits, and that is the key word here, the profits. Which means, let's say if you're going to get, say, 15% of the profits or 16% of the profits, that means you are a 16% shareholder in your subsurface real estate. The other 84% is now under the control of the gas company, and they could sell those shares to shareholders, private investors, foreign entities, whoever. That's what they do. That's how they get their funding, by selling off the remaining interest. Now, once again, remember the word profit. So now when these companies turn around and subcontract the work to install a well or a pipeline or a compressor station, if they decide that they don't have the funding or they're just not going to pay those people at this time, then the subcontractors have to take legal action. The only legal action they can take is against the landowner, because the landowner is the only one whose share is of the profits, which meaning the entire cost of that operation can be deducted from the landowner. So the landowner is essentially responsible for the bill.
Wow. This is a racket.
Right. Now, another thing that Chesapeake and the other companies are doing, Chesapeake owns they own various subsidiaries. One is Chesapeake Energy Management Incorporated, or as they call it, CIMI. Chesapeake, once they extract the gas, they can sell that gas for whatever they want. So they sell it to Chesapeake Energy Management for way below the market price. They might sell it to them for $1 per million cubic feet. The landowner only gets royalties on the first tier sale. So now they're only getting, 12 or 15 or 16% of that $1. And then when you take the costs out, that percentage doesn't cover the cost, and now the landowners are actually getting a bill in place of a royalty check. Then Chesapeake Energy Management then sells that to the Chesapeake Midstream Company, which is their pipeline company, and then they sell that to on the open market for top dollar. So Chesapeake still ends up making all of the profit, and their shareholders get the profit, but the royalty owner doesn't. Chrissy, I can name you a dozen people off the top of my head who will all say that they know someone who has a cousin, and their cousin's brother-in-law is getting $30,000 a month. But nobody knows who these people actually are. I've never met one personally in my life, but yet I can name you hundreds of people firsthand who are being negatively impacted by this, or have had their lives ruined and their properties ruined and their farms ruined.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And while I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, wasn't that what a drug launderer does? They take their money and they throw it into a business just to use it, just to put the money into it. That's what it sounds like.
It's the exact same process. I mean, look, you have to understand. Let's forget the oil and gas industry. Let's talk about corporations. Corporations only do one thing. Every corporation does one thing. they make money for their shareholders to increase their company's worth. That is their goal. They do that by reducing their costs or cutting costs and eliminating them any legal way they can. That's how they increase their profits. Now, when they see a farmer out in the rural areas, and I'm not implying that they are dumb or ignorant or anything like that. Most people know what are very well versed in the things that they need to know, and to make their life work or to make their business work. Most people are not well versed in oil and gas law or in corporate law. So that when these people come to you and they're trying to cut some kind of a deal to reel you in to get you to sign away your rights, which is exactly what you're doing, this is their thing. This is what they do. They do demographic studies. They study what buttons to push in the population to get people on board. Absolutely. They do that before they ever come around.
That's right.
So the thing is, you're essentially defenseless. You are not going to enter into any agreement with them where you are ultimately going to come out on top. That will not happen. They are not there to do that, and that's not their goal to do that. Right. Their goal is to make sure they come out on top.
Yeah, well, Brett informed us that he is an elected official and a chairman of the Sewer Authority. He works as an environmental consultant. Chesapeake's looking to short pay the contractors on the pipeline. Same in Auburn Township, Susquehanna County. So he's agreeing with you.
Yeah,
that's what they're doing.
And now I know who Brett is, and Brett knows what he's talking about. Very smart man.
I know. I wish he could come on the air and speak with us, but I don't have any way of getting in touch with him.
Right.
And I gave my Skype. I don't have. It's not a phone system. It's all online here, Brett. and I wish he could private chat me. Then give me his phone number. I could call him and bring him on air if he'd like to speak. But I'm not sure. He's being very brave to offer all this information, and very knowledgeable and very insightful.
Yes, he is. Actually, I will. Now that I know who he is, he had mentioned to me another problem. As everyone knows, in 2011, Northeast Pennsylvania was hammered with floods. Mm-hmm. A lot of areas were just completely decimated. Now, all flood insurance is through FEMA. No matter who your provider is, no matter who your insurance company or agent is, the insurance is actually through FEMA, and the insurance company gets a small percentage of the premium for doing the paperwork. That's all they do.
Now, what kind of madness is that?
No, that's actually fine. Okay. But the thing is, in order for you to get flood insurance through FEMA, you have to be in a designated
flood
area. You have to be in a flood zone. And when you're in a flood zone, in order for your township to qualify for the FEMA Flood Emergency Management Program, then the township has to agree to certain criteria, certain responsibilities, certain things that they're going to do and certain things they're not allowed to do. One of those things is they have to agree not to build or install industrial activities in flood zones. Well, the thing is, we're seeing well pads permitted to be in flood zones, in flood areas.
Right.
We're seeing flow back pits in flood zones. Now, and I think it's a matter of time when FEMA is going to say enough of this is enough, and they're going to say your township has violated their flood emergency management program with FEMA. So now your township is suspended from the program. That means those who live in that township lose their ability to carry flood insurance. If you have a home with a mortgage that requires you to have it, you can end up in default of your mortgage and lose your home. I brought this attention to the Pennsylvania DEP and to Pennsylvania Emergency Management, PEMA, and the DEP's response was, as long as an oil and gas permit meets their criteria, they are not allowed to deny it because it's in a flood zone. That's not part of their regulatory authority. PEMA, Pennsylvania Emergency Management, pretty much passed the buck the exact same way, saying that, they follow the federal regulations. They only get involved in emergency situations. They don't take part in the oversight.
Yeah.
So that means a lot of people are potentially at risk. Brett made me aware of this by citing an incident in a township that he's associated with. I'm not going to say what that township that is. I'll leave it up to him if he chooses. But they were thrown out of the FEMA flood emergency program for a few years because of that.
Well.
So that these things do happen. There's so many risks involved.
And we have touched on so many different aspects of the Marcellus Shale conundrum, debacle, whatever you want to call it.
I call it an invasion. They come in like an occupying army and tell us how they are going to behave in our townships and in our communities. They tell us what the laws are going to be because they wrote the laws. How could the people in Pennsylvania or in Ohio or in West Virginia or in Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma, Colorado, how could they not resent that? How do people not resent an occupying entity in their community dictating how they're supposed to live?
Yeah, and Brett also added that Uniondale Borough has been kicked out, I guess, of FEMA since 2003.
That's it, yep. I figured I'd let him talk about that because he was familiar with it.
I was going to say something, I forgot what I was going to say. No, we've touched on so many issues surrounding the problems with the fracking, hydrofracking in Pennsylvania, and it's not just my question was, could you elaborate on your understanding of the economic impact that hydrofracking has on the economy?
Yeah,
I like the way you say it. I really.
It's the typical boom bust economy cycle. We hear Governor Corbett talk about the wonderful economic opportunities and what this has done for the communities that have this activity going on. And again, I will point to Bradford County. Bradford County is the most heavily drilled county in Pennsylvania at this time. Prior to gas drilling, Bradford County had an unemployment rate of 7.8%. Here we are, 6 years later, Bradford County's current unemployment rate is 9.1%. Because what it does not take into consideration are the jobs that are lost permanently, forever, in tourism, and agriculture, and new home building, because most people are not going to go build a home in an industrial zone. Most people want to get away from that.
Right.
We're losing employment in forestry, in lumber. There was a company in Bradford County called, I think it was a Mastercraft. They used to be Formica at one time. They could no longer get hardwood up in Bradford County because the gas industry has been pretty much confiscating it for their activities and grinding a lot of it into sawdust to soak up spills. So they had to close last year and laid off 800 people.
Oh.
So
they're just decimating the whole economy of every state and county and borough and township that they touch.
Well, another thing you have to look at. Let's look at West Virginia and Arkansas. Okay,
right.
They've been in the extraction business for a few decades now. Why are they at the bottom of the economic ladder in this country? Why are they among the poorest states?
Right. And Texas. Would you say Texas was fifth? West Virginia was second, and Arkansas was third, or something like that?
Right. Why do they have the weakest economies? Because this is not like the circus that comes to town. The circus comes to town, and a few people make it a job working as vendors for the circus, and they'll make some money, and then the circus will go away, and then life goes back to normal. This is not going to be this way with this. When you have an industry like this coming in, and they're clear cutting and altering communities and chasing away tourism, once these people leave, once the mainstays in the tourist industry and agriculture, once they leave to find other places to go, they don't come back. And if they did, they would find an industrial wasteland. And no one's going to come back to that. I mean, I hear about how hydraulic fracturing is going to save the family farm. Well, let's say you have a 30-acre farm, and they say, we're going to put a 5-acre well pad on your farm. And you say, okay. Well, that 5-acre well pad, that 5 acres is actually only the well pad. That's not counting the space, the areas you're going to need for staging areas, water impoundment, storage, access roads. That 5-acre well pad is actually going to encompass an average of 24 to 28 acres of your 30-acre farm. Now, you don't have a farm that's producing anything. So that when those royalty payments drop off, you don't have an income any longer, or the ability to generate one.
Yeah, and just to continue, Brett talked about the FEMA program, National Flood Insurance Program, that it's a write-your-own program. Companies administer it for the National Flood Insurance Program, insurance license in 2004. That is why the 16 proposed FEMA buyouts in 2012 for Susquehanna County were canceled. They were leased. The 1969 Environmental Policy Act governs this. We have a USDA loan for the sewer plant, so we need an environmental impact statement to have a gas lease.
Right. He's right.
And Truth Seeker believes the master plan of the elite is working. Well, it
only works if we allow it to work.
Absolutely.
Chris, before you solve any problem, the first thing you have to do is acknowledge that there is a problem.
Absolutely.
And we have to acknowledge this as a problem. This is not something that we're going to be able to live with. It's not something that is designed to have us live with it. It's designed to move us away, to get us out. It's designed to destroy communities. It's left ghost towns in its wake throughout this country. This new technique of hydraulic fracturing, unconventional oil and gas drilling was developed in the mid-'90s, but it really was not able to take off until the 2005 Clean Air Act, which exempted it from everything. Exempted it from the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Superfund laws. Once it became exempt, then they knew they can get away with it. And what's going to happen is people are going to leave. I mean, I drive through Sullivan County. Look, you live in Sullivan County too. And the 11 and a half years I've been here, I've never seen so many for sale signs. It's becoming like the new state flower, the for sale sign. We're seeing it, and those are only the homes that are advertised. I know a lot of people who are trying to sell their homes without putting up a sign because they don't want to compete with the guy who does have a for sale sign in front of their house.
And my sister's a realtor, and she gets calls all the time, and people want to know if they can get land or property with the mineral rights.
Right.
And
right, and you'd have to be insane to buy a property that did not come with the mineral rights, because you're only buying half a property. It's what they call a split estate. You see what I'm saying?
Yep, I had one with my husband. We were part of the community, Berries Grove in Schuylkill County, and it was surrounded by a lake, a pond, whatever, 15-acre pond, and our property did not convey the mineral rights. They were not part of the land agreement. But we didn't know that then. That was 20 years ago.
Right. Well, now, and most people, for all intents and purposes, never really looked into that. It was never that much of an issue. Now it is becoming an issue, and people are looking at that.
They're called quiet something. People trying to
quiet deed settlement.
Right, and people are trying to get the land rights back for the mineral rights. Yeah. And they said it's impossible. Right.
It is. Now, one thing that I do want to caution people about, in Pennsylvania, there are some oil and gas leases that go back 100 years that expired, and they're held with companies that no longer exist. Do not assume that automatically those rights revert back to the current owner. That does not happen unless you go and have a deed correction, a title correction, and have that removed and the rights restored to the property. If not, they are considered what's called abandoned oil and gas and mineral rights. And they could be purchased out from under you by a third entity without you even knowing it. Because they're considered abandoned or orphaned because the current owner did not have those restored to the deed.
Right. Yeah, it's just diabolical. I love that word, but I think there's a better one. I'll have to find it. I'll have to look up in the thesaurus or something.
Well, I know a few better words, but I'm not going to say them.
You can't on Shiziz.
Right.
We have we lose too many listeners. There's people we don't even know are listening. We have over 20,000 plus people listening around the world to the radio stations on different networks that either simulcast or just listen from shoutcast and whatever. So we don't even know who's listening, but we do know when they drop. So we don't want to lose any. And Brett made another comment. They were exempt as long as they did not use diesel. I'm not sure what he was talking about.
Right. They sort of made like a pinky swear promise that they would not use diesel fuel in their hydraulic fracturing fluids.
Oh.
We found out a few years ago, oops, they were. But what they did was, instead of calling it diesel fuel, they broke down the diesel fuel into its components and only listed the components.
Yeah,
so they didn't call it diesel fuel.
What do they call that? They have their corporate secret recipe.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the proprietary formulas, and they say, well, Coca-Cola doesn't, they don't tell you tell you what their secret formula is, and McDonald's doesn't tell you what's in the secret sauce. I said, well, that's true, but I have the option whether I want to eat at McDonald's or drink a Coca-Cola. When you're putting something in my water, I don't have that option any longer. It's no longer my choice. Mm-hmm. That's the difference.
We got two people trying to contact me, and I'm ignoring them. I'm sorry. Who is this? Okay, Brett's given me his email, but not his phone number. So, I want to thank him for doing that.
Well, I mean, actually, Chris, it's
11 o'clock.
It's a little after 11 my time here, and I'm going to have an early day tomorrow. I have some.
Me too. I have to be up by 6 o'clock. So I just want to say thank you. It's been a wonderful, interesting evening. I want to thank all the people in the chat, their wonderful comments and questions and statements. And thank Shaziz Radio and Awake Radio for providing this venue for us to chat. And we will do this again very soon. And thank you, John. You're free to go.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I appreciate the opportunity. And well, the only thing I want to say to people before we do get off is that don't take my word for anything. Don't take the industry's word. Don't take the politician's word. Do your own research. Do your own homework and due diligence, and educate yourselves. That is the most important thing you can do. An informed populace is, one to be reckoned with.
Absolutely. And thank you, everybody, for participating. You've just made this wonderful. Thank you, Truth Seeker, and thank you, Brett, and Carolyn, who left earlier, and Debbie, and Pammy, and Muddy on another station chatting, and just all this wonderful stuff. Thank you, John, for making this possible. And we will be in touch, and I will talk to you soon. Have a wonderful day tomorrow. Thank you so much.
You too. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night. And there you have it, John Trallo, wonderful, amazing guitar teacher who happens to be an absolutely interesting gentleman who's done so much to try to get the word out and to change the status quo of the big corporations in Sullivan County, and it's done an amazing job. He has a wicked reputation. I met some of his counterparts, the counters, and I mean that not facetiously, but people who are really not liking him, that consider themselves energy proponents, but are doing everything they can, closing ranks, to keep the word out, to keep people from being aware of the possibilities of the truth of the problems with fracking, hydrofracking, and the environmental impact, as well as the human and animal impact. So